Hey guys, it's Whitney. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing my first audio review. I personally feel like what these are is pretty obvious, but at the same time I can see how it could also be confusing. If you want to skip the introduction and the explanation and skip right to the review, I'll leave a timestamp so that you can do that. So these are just book reviews that are audio only. Sure, there's a nice little podcasty aesthetic to go along with everything because this is YouTube, but these reviews are something that I intend for you guys to listen to, not to watch. So there's not going to be any fancy editing or graphics that you need to see, just thoughts on books. I know this format is a little bit out of the ordinary, but I hope this is something that you guys will enjoy and maybe even find value in. Today, I'm going to be diving into The Alchemists of Loom by Elise Kova. This book is the first in a trilogy called The Loom Saga. Ari lost everything she once loved when the Five Guilds resistance fell to the Dragon King. Now she uses her unparalleled gift for clockwork machinery in tandem with notoriously unscrupulous morals to contribute to a thriving underground organ market. There isn't a place on Loom that is secure from the engineer turned thief, and her magical talents are sold to the highest bidder as long as the job defies their dragon oppressors. Savari would do anything to see his sister usurp the Dragon King and sit on the throne. His family's house has endured the shame of being the lowest rung in the dragon society for far too long. The Alchemist Guild down on Loom may just hold the key to putting his kin in power, if Savari can get to them before the Dragon King's assassins. When Ari stumbles upon a wounded Savari, she sees an opportunity to slaughter an enemy and make a profit off his corpse. But the dragon sees an opportunity to navigate Loom with the best person to get him where he needs to go. He offers her the one thing that Ari cannot refuse, a wish of her greatest desire, if she brings him to the Alchemists of Loom. First off, I want to say that my personal opinion is that this book is a hidden gem. I had zero expectations going into this book. It was something that had been hanging around on my shelf from basically around the time that it came out. It's one of those books that made its rounds on booktubes and then sort of vanished, like no one ever actually got around to reading it. All I have to say to those people is that they are seriously missing out. So this story is told in 5 alternating perspectives. 2 of them being the main focus of the story and the other 3 being more like side perspectives. So a couple of my very undetailed initial thoughts that I think you should know are that I think that this book is very fast paced. It's about 400 pages long, which for some people that's long, for some people that's not so long, but I flew through this book. The second thing is that I think the world building and the characters are phenomenal. So I want to start with the world. This book has some pretty spectacular world building, like I mentioned before. I felt like I was learning everything organically, like the author wasn't having to force feed me any of the information about the world that I needed to know in order for anything that was happening to make sense. There are 2 main worlds. Cities? I'm gonna call them worlds. The first one is Nova, which is where the dragons live, and the second one is Loom, which is where the Fenthri live. The Dragon Society of Nova is divided into 3 ruling houses, and there is political tension between them pretty much always. Also, the dragons are less what you typically think when you hear dragon and more of their own unique sort of humanoid creature. On Loom, however, everyone is divided by guilds that were originally designed to work in a sort of harmony, but when the dragons took control of Loom, and in turn of the Fenthri, it turned everything that they had known upside down. So instead of being able to choose their own guild or just learn as they wished, the Fenthri are now placed in guilds based on where they're born. They have to wear the mark of their guild on their cheek, I believe it was, and they also have to pass several tests in their youth in order to not be killed. Basically, they're just going to kill them if they don't pass these tests. I feel like that's a pretty decent overview of the world without going too in-depth with it, because if we go too in-depth, we may also be encroaching on spoiler territory. So next, I want to talk a little bit about the characters. The first character that we meet in this story is one of our protagonists, Ariana. She's a well-known thief called the White Wraith, and by well-known, I mean the White Wraith has a reputation throughout all of Loom and also Nova. Not that everybody knows that Ariana is the White Wraith. Actually, most people don't know that Ariana is the White Wraith. What I love the most about Ariana is her attitude. She's got one of those attitudes that people are either going to love or hate, and it just happens to be the type of attitude that I really enjoy. She's hard-headed and opinionated, but the more that we get to know her and the more terrible situations that she's put in, the more of her layers are peeled back and we find out who she is underneath all of the guarded posturing that she does. Also, did I mention that Aerie is a chimera, which is sort of a Fen-3 dragon hybrid, but the way that chimeras are made is really fascinating, and I don't want to spoil that experience of learning how they're made for anyone. The second character is Sivare. He's a dragon from Nova who is part of the Shin family. They are currently the lowest ranked family in Nova, and they have been for a while. Sivare makes his way to Loom, where he meets Ariana, who is not the biggest dragon enthusiast that you'll ever meet. She's pretty dead set on killing him until after he offers her a boon in exchange for her to bring him to the Alchemists of Loom. And a boon is sort of just like a magical promise, magical pact for her to get something that she wants from him. So Sivare at his core is a cinnamon roll. I said what I said, okay? I'm not sorry. He didn't come off that way at first because of his views of the Fen-3, but man, did I enjoy the journey of him learning that a lot of what he was taught about the Fen-3 was wrong. Aside from Adriana and Sivare, there are 3 other points of view that we get throughout this novel. We get the point of view of Florence, we get the point of view of Leona, and we get the point of view of Petra. I think it's better to go in blind with these points of view. Some are smaller than others, but honestly, every point of view in this book made the experience so interesting. I don't know that the world building would have worked as well as it did without them. Another thing that you might be wondering about is the writing style. Personally, I find Elise Kova's writing style very easy to read. I don't think it's too flowery, but also it does a really fantastic job of integrating the steampunk bits of the world into the book without it feeling like steampunk is being shoved down your throat, which is how I feel most of the time with steampunk settings. Another thing you might be wondering about, because I read a lot of queer books, is that are there any LGBTQIA plus characters? And I am happy to report that yes, there are. There's only one, but it's our main character, Ariana. She is openly bi on the page, and this, for me, seems like a really important thing to mention because a lot of reviews don't seem to mention it. I'm not sure if maybe those readers just missed it or what. I'm also not sure if it plays a part in any of the other books in the series at all. What is a review without negatives? I gave Alchemists of the Loom 5 stars, and I don't give out my 5-star ratings very often, but I don't think that any book is just perfect. I honestly don't have many negative thoughts about this book, but I think that there are always going to be a few things that can be touched on. Some things that don't really bother me may be some things that you'd hate. So I wanted to touch on some of those things, even though I'd like to scream at all of you to read this book. Now, I just know that it's not for everyone because no book is for everyone. The first thing is that though I think the multiple points of view in this story made it more layered and interesting, I don't think that it would have changed the story all that much to omit one or more of them. Personally, I really thought that Florence's chapters are needed and that the story might suffer without her point of view, but I feel like the world building that was done with the chapters from the point of view of Leona could have been incorporated some other way. But personally, I liked the way that it was done, even though it could make things a little confusing for some readers. Now, Petra's chapter, I'm pretty sure she only had 1 chapter throughout this whole book. I may be wrong, it might have been, 2 or 3, but it was very, very, very few. And I don't think that they needed to be included. I think they could have waited to start including her point of view until the next book. The next thing are the fighting and action scenes. There are a lot of action and fight scenes. I feel like they are crafted very well, but if you're bored by that kind of thing, then this one might not be for you. Even though, personally, I'd urge you to maybe give it a try anyway, but I'm probably just biased. I hope that you guys found this review helpful. If you did, please don't forget to give this video a like and maybe consider subscribing to the channel. I really enjoyed talking about this new favorite of mine, and I'm trying my hardest to keep things spoiler free while wanting to gush about all of the details. There is no doubt in my mind that I'll be continuing this series as well as checking out more books by Elise Kova. I hope that you guys will tune in to my next review, but until then, happy reading.